For the next few minutes, I simply watched in silence, giving the two goblin siblings time to calm down. Their raw terror slowly faded, replaced by the fragile, trembling realization that their lives had been spared. They looked at each other in stunned silence for a long moment, then, all at once, threw their arms around one another in a tight, desperate embrace. Their small green bodies shook as they clung to each other, rain still dripping from their soaked hair and ragged clothes. The sight tugged at something deep inside me. I felt my non-existent chest tighten just a little. Still, sentiment could wait. I needed to get them inside. I couldn't leave them out there, soaked to the bone and shivering in the cold rain. More importantly, the brother was badly injured, and he clearly needed rest and shelter. So, I opened the gate leading into my main hall. The heavy wooden doors groaned loudly as they swung open on their old hinges. I even lit the torches along the walls, warm golden light spilling outward to show that it was safe and dry inside. However, the goblins did not seem to understand my good intentions. If anything, the sudden movement of the doors only frightened them again. They didn't step forward. Instead, both of them dropped instantly to their knees and prostrate themselves fully on the wet ground, their bodies trembling as if they were kneeling before an actual deity. Oh God! I froze for a moment, completely taken aback by the sudden act of worship. But then, I realized it. Wait a minute. This is it. My long-awaited moment. After all, I had just saved them by displaying overwhelming power. To them, I must have looked like some kind of higher being, a mysterious, godlike entity that had protected them from certain death. That meant the conditions were met. Intelligent enough? Check. Aware of my existence? Check. Possess sufficient affinity? Check. Able to recognize and accept me as their sovereign? Check. It was time. My first citizens. System. Grant these two citizenship. Now. Ding. Would you like to use citizenship granting on these two forest goblins? Cost, 13 points. Do it. I willed the confirmation without hesitation. The bodies of the two goblins flickered, faint light rippling across their forms as the citizenship process began. The next few seconds felt far longer than I expected. Come on. Come on. Then, all at once, both of them flared with brilliant light. And at the same time, the system's distinct chime rang out. Ding. Congratulations. You have successfully granted citizenship to a level 8 forest goblin. You have successfully granted citizenship to a level 5 forest goblin. Ding. Achievement unlocked, first citizens. Points plus 20. Points remaining, 187 points. You currently possess no sovereign skills. The system recommends visiting the sovereign shop to acquire skills for managing your citizens. Oh hell yeah. Finally. Finally. Excitement surged through me like a raging fire. I had done it. I really did it. Without hesitation, I purchased Eye of the Overlord. With this skill, I would finally be able to see the stats of my citizens. Now then. Let's see what you've got, little goblins. Sovereign skill Eye of the Overlord. It was a passive skill that allowed me to observe the basic status of any citizen under my rule. And now, I could finally see it. Clear as day, the status windows of my first two citizens appeared before my eyes. The first thing that caught my eye was, oh God. Boosted sex drive level max? What the hell was up with these guys? But then, I remembered that they were goblins. Of course goblins were lust-driven. Alongside their notorious greed, it was their most famous trait. In all the anime and manga I'd read, they always had this overwhelming urge to reproduce and often kidnapped females of other races to breed with. That was a little terrifying to think about. Imagine having goblins kidnap young human girls, lock them up in my castle basement, then torture and breed them every single day? Oh hell fucking no. But well, I couldn't just assume these particular goblins were like that. Maybe they only mated within their own kin? After all, female goblins existed, and they had this same sex drive skill too. I guess I will need to watch them closely now that they are my citizens to make sure they don't do such monstrous things. I made a mental note. As long as there is no non-consensual sex inside my castle, I'm cool. And not to mention, I can make rules, can't I? I literally have a skill for it. That aside, there was an urgent problem I needed to deal with right now. The brother's negative status. Bleeding level 1. Description: causes the victim to continuously lose HP. The amount depends on the level. Effect: -3 HP/minute. Duration: 1 hour. He only had 25 HP left. Worse, he had very weak HP regeneration to offset the bleeding, recovering only a tiny 0.25 HP per minute. If this wasn't treated soon, he would be dead in less than 10 minutes. As I watched, his HP ticked down again. 24 HP. Blood had already pooled beneath him, soaking into the ground and mixing with the rain until the two were almost indistinguishable. His eyes were dull and unfocused, as if his strength were slipping away with every labored breath. He looked like he might collapse at any moment. All right. First things first. I need to get them inside. I dropped a piece of meat just beyond the entrance of my main hall. The goblins hesitated only briefly before understanding my intent. The little sister hurried to her brother's side, helping him to his feet and guiding him carefully into the castle, where it was warmer and mercifully dry. Once inside, she picked up the meat. She didn't eat it. Instead, she handed it to her brother. Thankfully, he could still chew. Despite the pain and despite the blood still flowing freely, he devoured the entire steak in moments. I dropped 2 more pieces of meat. This time, both of them ate. While they did, I pulled up their status windows again, scanning every description line by line, searching desperately for anything that could stop the bleeding before it was too late. And then, I found it. There were still a few things that could save him. First, his skill. Regeneration level 1. Effect: restores 0.5% of maximum HP per minute. With a max HP of 110, that should have meant 0.55 HP per minute. But the problem was the debuff weighing him down. Fatigue. Description: once stamina drops below 25, the victim's speed, HP recovery, and MP recovery are halved. Damage output is reduced, while all incoming damage and negative status effects are amplified by 50%. It was brutal. Worse still, it strengthened the bleeding effect, accelerating his death instead of slowing it. So the priority was clear. The fatigue had to go. But waiting for his stamina to recover naturally wasn't an option. At this rate, he would be dead long before crossing the threshold. Fortunately, I had already taken action. By giving him the steak earlier, I had unknowingly triggered another one of his skills. Carnivorism level 1. Description: after consuming meat, grants a significant boost to stamina recovery and HP regeneration. The duration depends on the type and amount of meat consumed. Effect: beef steak, 500 G. Stamina regeneration, plus 1 per second. HP regeneration, plus 1 per minute. Duration, 20 minutes. And just like that, everything changed. Within half a minute of activating carnivorism, his stamina surged past the danger line. The fatigue debuff faded away, and with it, the penalties that had been dragging him toward death. Freed from fatigue, and combined with his regeneration skill, his HP recovery climbed to 1.5 HP per minute. Better. But not enough. Even without fatigue amplifying it, bleeding was still draining 3 HP per minute. That left him with a net loss of 1.5 HP per minute. With nearly an hour remaining on the bleeding effect, the outcome was still the same. Death. Just slower. Giving him another stake didn't help either. It only extended carnivorism's duration, not its effect. Which meant there was only one option left. The final push, level up. I spent another 20 points and purchased Lord's Blessing level 1. Now, let's see if this is enough to tip the scales. The logic was simple enough. If I could raise his level, his maximum HP would increase. And who knew? I might get lucky and this world might follow the classic rule of fully healed upon leveling up. With that hope in mind, I immediately checked the new skill after purchasing it from the shop. Lord's Blessing. Description: spend points to enhance a citizen's level or even upgrade their skills. When I activated it on the little goblin, a set of options appeared before me. I could raise his level from 8 to 9 for 10 points. Alternatively, I could increase the level of one of his skills. There was no option to directly raise his stats, unfortunately. Still, that was plenty useful. The most straightforward solution was obvious: boost his regeneration skill and let his body handle the rest. Or so I thought. For some reason, the option was grayed out. Frowning, I looked closer and soon found the reason. Skill, regeneration, level 1. Upgrade requirement: reach at least level 10 and complete the first evolution into a stronger variant. Oh. Damn. So these guys could evolve once they hit level 10? Hell yeah. That is very good to know. Without waiting any longer, I clicked the level up option twice, pushing him all the way to level 10. The jump from 9 to 10 cost more points. 12, to be exact. So the higher the level, the more expensive it became. That was fair enough. The goblin's eyes snapped open in shock as his body began to glow. Ray-ar. A powerful roar tore through the room, startling the goblin girl beside him. Then the light faded. The goblin lurched upright, suddenly full of life, and let out a joyful shout. Haha. Looks like it worked. He was practically buzzing with energy now, like he had just been flooded with raw power. I quickly checked his status again. He was still bleeding, but at least he would survive. With his increased maximum HP, he finally had enough of a buffer to endure the full duration. The goblin turned toward his sister, who was still frozen in shock and confusion, and shouted something at her, probably explaining what he had just experienced. A moment later, her expression broke into joy. She jumped up, and the two of them began an awkward little dance, laughing and hugging each other. Watching that, I couldn't help but feel like a rather good ruler. Bringing happiness to my citizens. Yeah, that felt nice. Now then. As I checked the goblin's status again, a thought crossed my mind. Earlier, it had mentioned evolution. That probably meant turning into those taller, muscular goblins who had attempted to raid my castle not long ago. But how? Do they have to, like, do a quest for evolution or something. Or I have to give them some kind of special item. A magic stone? Evolution pill? As it turned out, none of the above. The goblin began to glow again. His little sister stared at him with wide, sparkling eyes, frozen in awe as light poured from his body. His silhouette stretched upward, taller, broader, larger by the second. Muscles thickened. His frame expanded. And then, boom. Evolution. Yara. He threw his head back and roared, his voice deeper and far more powerful than before. The light shattered like broken glass, revealing his new form. Congratulations. Your citizen, no name has successfully evolved. New variant unlocked, Super Forest Goblin. Super Forest Goblin? Is that really their official variant name? Honestly, I had expected something like Hobgoblin, the way it always went in the Isekai novels and anime I'd consumed. But no. Still, names aside, his new appearance was honestly kind of amazing. Even I was caught off guard. He didn't look like the tall, bulky goblins that had attacked my castle before. Instead, he appeared more human. Surprisingly so. His frame was lean and well-defined, six-pack abs clearly visible, and his face was downright handsome. Well, mostly. His nose was still a bit large, his ears remained pointy. And of course, his skin was still greener than grass. Even so, it was far better than I had expected. If anything, he looked like a strange blend of goblin and elf. Wait. Could this be because I evolved him? Had my influence granted him a special form? The little goblin sister stared up at him in awe, her body trembling as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. In response, the goblin brother reached out and gently patted her head, a soft smile on his face. Aw! That really warmed my heart. And as if that weren't enough, a new achievement popped up as well. Ding! Achievement unlocked, First Evolution. Plus 20 points earned. Points remaining, 149. Oh, damn. So I basically got my investment back for free? This is amazing. I had spent 22 points raising his level, and the achievement refunded me almost the same amount. I couldn't believe it, but for once, it felt like the system was actually on my side. The newly evolved Super Forest Goblin dropped to one knee and bowed deeply, expressing his gratitude. And just like that, another thought crept into my mind. What if I evolved the sister too? It wouldn't be fair to upgrade only the brother, right? So I did it. It cost me another 38 points to push her to 10. Expensive, but manageable. Just like her brother, she began to glow. Light wrapped around her small frame, and her body started to grow not only taller, but fuller in certain areas. I watched in stunned fascination. The light intensified, then burst outward. And when it finally faded, holy system! What the hell? The system might actually be cultured. Because standing before me now was no longer the small, scruffy goblin girl I knew. In her place stood a stunning goblin woman. She was tall and confident, with a strikingly cute face framed by a long green ponytail. Her body was athletic yet voluptuous, the kind that could stir lust in almost any man. I quickly checked their statuses, curious to see if there was anything new or if their stats had seen any major improvements. They had gotten considerably stronger. Not only had their HP, MP, and stamina basically doubled, but their core attributes had skyrocketed as well. Plus, their rank had increased from 1 star to 2. They didn't gain any flashy new skills via evolution, like regeneration level 2, unfortunately. But at least the prerequisite for it had now been met. I felt like they would gain powerful new skills very soon. I then wondered, with these improved stats, would they be able to defeat the wolves if they happened to meet those predators again? I had a feeling they would stand a decent chance now. But considering how massive and terrifying those wolves were, I wasn't about to take any risks. Anyway, with the matter dealt with and the evolution complete, I was really excited. I wanted to give them a quest immediately. I had even already purchased the quest creation skill from the shop. But it was night time now. Given that those two had just had such an eventful day, narrowly escaping a pack of monstrous wolves and then evolving successfully, they surely deserved some rest and peace. So, as the most benevolent ruler ever, I let them be. So that I could exploit their labor tomorrow at full strength. Muahaha. However, as the night dragged on. Ayo. What the hell is going on? Because they started fucking each other right after that. PLAP 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 PLAP. Relentless, wet, meaty slaps echoed loudly through my empty halls. Oh God. The sight wasn't just obscene. It terrified me. It was like watching living sex machines. Those two weren't just sex maniacs. They were completely possessed by it. Their marathon lasted for hours on end. As if something had ripped out all their limits and replaced them with bottomless, insatiable hunger. As they snoo wildly, their maddened moans and grunts filled the space, bouncing off the cold stone walls. And God help me. I thought they are brother and sister? Well, seems I assumed wrong. Or maybe I wasn't. After all, do goblins even give a fuck about that? About human rules, taboos, morality, or blood ties? In the end, those bastards somehow managed to have so much sex their stamina ran dry and both got fatigue again, panting heavily, and soaked my floor with all kind of fluid. The next morning. Day 83. Point remaining, 91 points. It was not a quiet morning at all. As soon as they woke up and their stamina recovered even a little, they started having sex again even before the first rays of the sun began to rise. I knew I shouldn't interrupt someone having sex. But at this rate, they'd run out of stamina fast. Meaning, less stamina to slave away for me. I was wondering how the hell I should tell them both to stop right now, until I noticed something else while checking their skills. Active status effect. Sex boost, X. Description, gain huge stat bonuses and various buffs for a duration after having sex. All core attributes plus 30%. Max HP plus 30%. Stamina consumption minus 70%. Duration, 10 hours. Excuse me, what? I couldn't believe my eyes. These were straight up game breaking buffs, and they got them just from sex? What the hell? That stamina consumption reduction alone almost completely negated the stamina loss from all the pounding. Either way, enough was enough. I waited for their last orgasm, then fed them both some meat to recover their stamina before I started figuring out how to configure a proper quest. First things first, I needed to give them names. With hundreds, maybe even thousands, of creatures potentially flocking to my castle to become citizens in the future, I knew I needed a proper naming system. It was for my own sanity. I wanted to look at a name and instantly know what race I was dealing with. Otherwise, things would get chaotic and confusing very quickly. Technically, the most efficient method would be labeling them Goblin 1, Goblin 2, Goblin 3, and so on. But that felt too boring and lazy. These were my citizens, now I needed to at least put in some effort and make it feel personal. In the end, I settled on the prefix Gapu. From now on, every goblin citizen I acquired would be named Gapu something. The first two ended up as Gapuro, the male, and Gapuran, the female. Simple, nice, and kinda cool. I liked them. With the naming ceremony out of the way, I finally moved on to test quest creation. I activated the skill and studied it for a quick moment. Turns out, it was far more complicated and interesting than I had expected. The instructions were surprisingly clear and detailed. This made me wonder. Could it be that the system was actually created by multiple different entities? After all, the one who gave me the citizenship granting skill was absolutely terrible at explaining anything, forcing me to figure everything out through painful trial and error. However, the one who designed quest creation seemed to be very good at explaining things properly. Now that's some interesting thought. I mused. Anyways, when I activated the quest creation skill, a blue form floated before my mind's eye. Quest form. Quest name. Prerequisite, optional. Quest info. Quest type. Objective. Reward. Penalty, optional. Quest name, prerequisite, and quest info were pretty self-explanatory. For quest type, I was presented with many useful options. It could be one-time, repeatable, periodic, chain, or even group quest. If I set a quest to repeatable, I would only need to fill the form once and have it run automatically forever. That was pretty neat. I could also set up a chain of quests, just like in classic RPG adventure games. Then, for objectives, the system recommended I make them as specific as possible. And that made sense. If I set the objective too vague, like chop some wood, the system might not recognize it as complete. But if I set it as chop 30 units of wood within 2 hours, the system could track it automatically, and the citizen would have a much better idea of exactly what I wanted. And finally, the reward section. What the hell is a power stone? I could also put things like meat, resources, or equipment as rewards. Basically, anything inside my inventory. But the system strongly recommended using something called power stone as the reward. But what the hell is a power stone? Do I even have a power stone? Just when I was wondering about that, another notification came. Ding. Your power stone balance is 0. Would you like to convert points into power stones? And with that, a conversion window opened. Conversion menu. You can convert your points into power stones. Power stones can be exchanged for points or vice versa at a fixed rate. System fee, 10% automatically taken off balance after every 100 points converted. Exchange rate, 5 points equals 1 power stone, F. The power stone icon showed a small, glowing white crystal. And when I focused on it, the description popped up. Power stone. Description: the materialization of points in the real world. Contains the essence of power and magic, with endless potential. Wanted by all beings and creatures in Azef. Since I had some points to spare, I exchanged 25 points for 5 power stones. Points remaining, 66. I moved on to creating the quest by filling in the remaining lines of the form. Quest creation form. Quest name, Wood Gathering Quest. Prerequisite, none. Quest info, collect wood from the surrounding forest to help build and expand the castle. Quest type, repeatable. Objective: gather 100 units of wood from the forest, and drop them within the castle territory. Reward: 1 power stone F. When I entered 100 units of wood as the objective, the system recommended a reward of 0 to 1 power stones. But when I increased the requirement to 200 units, the recommendation shifted to 0 to 2. Wait, a 0 power stone reward? Is that even possible? But after thinking for a second, I understood why. The goblins saw me as some kind of powerful being. I had not only saved their lives, but also helped them evolve. So even if I offered no wage at all, they would probably still accept the quest. But I wasn't that heartless a ruler. They were my citizens, not slaves. They deserved fair pay. By my calculations, I could get back 20 points if I sold all 100 units of wood back to the system. That was equivalent to 4 power stones, so paying 1 power stone for the labor was like giving them a 25% share of the return, which seemed pretty fair. And if they performed the task well, I might even consider giving them performance bonuses later. Not to mention, the profit would eventually be reinvested into the castle to improve their lives. Yeah, let's go with it. Once everything was set, I hit the Create Quest button. Are you sure you want to create this quest? Warning: once a quest has been issued, it cannot be modified unless you take it down. Once it has been accepted, it can no longer be modified or cancelled. I paused to read the warning. So basically, no take-backs. I needed to be careful. Imagine accidentally adding an extra 0 and paying 10 times the intended reward. On top of that, the rule also ensured that I could never scam my own citizens by cancelling a quest right before they turned it in. TCH, I'm not that evil, you know. I muttered to the system. Finally, I double-checked the quest details to make sure everything was correct before hitting confirm. The moment I did, a scroll icon appeared in my vision. The quest text swirled into it, and a second later, a physical scroll materialized inside my inventory. Its description perfectly mirrored the quest details. Now came the next question. How exactly was I supposed to distribute it? To issue the quest, either give it to a citizen or post it on a flat surface. If you give the scroll to a specific citizen, it will be assigned to them only. If you post it on a surface, that surface will become a quest board. Anyone who sees the paper can accept the quest. All right? I did as instructed, focusing on the wall. A sheet of paper suddenly materialized on the stone surface, displaying the quest details in neat writing. A sharp ding echoed through the room, not just inside my head, but loud enough for the goblins to hear. Gapuro and Gapuran perked up, their heads snapping toward the wall. They scrambled to their feet and hurried over to the notice, spending a solid minute staring at it. Oh. Wara wara! Gapuro exclaimed, his eyes widening and sparkling with excitement. Gapuran was no different. The moment she finished reading, she looked just as thrilled. The two goblins placed their hands on the paper. Ding! Gapuro has accepted your wood-gathering quest. Gapuran has accepted your wood-gathering quest. Nice! Excitement surged through me. But wait a minute. It only hit me then. The text on that scroll was written in English. How the hell could the goblins understand English? Is this the system's doing? If the system can make the goblins understand English, then it must also have some way for me to understand Goblish, right? But since the goblins had no English skill listed on their status screens, I figured it had to be something else. Perhaps the system used some kind of magical writing that automatically displayed text in a form readable to whoever was looking at it. Like, the quest details appeared in English for me, but when the goblins looked at the same paper, it showed up in Goblish instead. Still, there has to be a way for me to understand these guys. For some reason, I felt certain of it. After all, how was I supposed to rule over them if I could not understand a word they were saying? Maybe once I upgraded the shop further, I would be able to unlock language skills. I really hope that is the case. Anyway, the goblins had accepted the quest and were ready to head out. But before that, there was one more problem. They could not exactly chop down trees with their bare hands, could they? So I dropped the 2 stone axes I had purchased earlier from the system right in front of them. Both axes came equipped with the lumberjack skill. Either I had gotten lucky, or there was actually a higher chance for an item to roll a relevant skill rather than a useless one. The goblins immediately snatched up the axes and held them aloft like priceless treasures, their eyes sparkling with excitement. Haha, go. My minions. Go make me some wood. A few moments later. At first, I thought I would be able to expand my vision by following what my citizens could see, like in those RTS games where your units roam around and dispel the fog of war. But nope. Even when the goblins stood right at the edge of my vision range, I still could not see beyond my own limits. Still, watching the 2 of them chop down trees was kind of fun. They had each chosen different trees and were swinging their axes with all their might, as if they had somehow turned it into a competition. Since Gopuran had picked a smaller tree, though, I found myself wondering who would finish first. Gopuro had a higher attack stat, so his swings were obviously more powerful. Each strike bit into the oak with a heavy thunk, sending vibrations up his arms. His muscles tensed beneath his green skin, showing off pure raw masculine strength. But Gopuran, on the other hand. Yeah, a hot muscular goblin girl doing lumber work? Hell fucking yes. Her massive boobs bounced with every swing. Her hips swayed, her ass jiggled, and sweat glistened across her body under the sunlight. Fallen leaves clung to her ponytail, somehow making the whole scene even better. It was absolute peak fan service. And that was maybe why time seemed to pass much faster than it should have. The trees were fairly large, so it took a while to bring them down. On top of that, they still had to chop each tree into manageable logs before they could carry everything back to the castle. And speaking of carrying, something interesting happened. I had been wondering how the hell these 2 were planning to haul all that wood back to me, only for them to come up with their own solution. First, they found 2 long poles from the fallen branches of the trees they had just cut down. Then, after spending another 20 minutes rummaging through the woods, they managed to weave together a simple harness out of sturdy vines. Using the poles and the vines, they fashioned a crude drag sled and loaded the freshly cut logs onto it. After securing everything with a few more lengths of vine, they were able to drag the wood all the way back to my castle. Damn. How are these guys actually smarter than me now? I felt a little ashamed, because only now did I realize that I had somehow lived 30 years without knowing how to make something as simple as a wooden sled. Still, I could not help feeling a little confused. How did these 2 even know how to make one? There was no way they had just invented it on the spot. They had clearly done this before. Did they learn it from other goblins? Then I suddenly remembered something. Back then, the goblins had brought ladders when they raided me. So, maybe primitive technology like this was not all that surprising after all. Anyway, that was definitely good news. Since I could store any item in my inventory as long as it entered my territory, I immediately snatched up the wood the moment the goblins passed through the gate and dropped their loads. Ding. 1 wood obtained. Ding. 1 wood obtained. Each unit of wood weighed 10 kilograms. The 2 trees yielded around 100 units each, more or less. So, 1 tree was already enough for them to complete their quest. But even so, it took them 3 hours each to do that. I definitely must find a way to improve the efficiency further later on. Gapuro completed the quest first. Ding. Gapuro has completed your wood gathering quest. He plopped down onto the ground for a moment, breathing heavily and wiping sweat from his brow. But even through the exhaustion, a huge smile stretched across his face. In less than 2 seconds, he was already back on his feet, probably ready to accept the quest all over again. Just then, another chime rang out. Ding. Gapuro looked up. Processing quest reward. Completed. From thin air, something materialized. Slowly drifting down into Gapuro's hand, a small white crystal glowed, emitting a faint light. It was the Power Stone. His quest reward, distributed automatically by the system. At the same time, I noticed my Power Stone balance had been deducted by 1. Gapuro cheered and pumped his fist into the air. His grin looked just like that of a child receiving the toy they had always wanted. Haha. I'm glad he's happy with the reward. I wonder how he'll use the Power Stone, though. But the moment that thought crossed my mind, Gapuro tossed the crystal straight into his mouth. Crunch. He ate it like hard candy. His whole body glowed briefly before returning to normal. I immediately checked his status, but I did not see any major changes. Except, his mana and stamina had recovered slightly. But given his happy reaction just now, the Power Stone's effect, there's no way it would just stop at recovering MP and stamina, right? I had a theory. What if, by consuming the Power Stone, he's gaining experience points? And when his experience is high enough, he levels up? Since Gapuro's status screen did not display an EXP bar, I had no way to verify it. Still, it felt like the most likely explanation. Even if he was gaining EXP, maybe it simply was not enough for a level up yet, which was why I could not see any noticeable changes in his stats. Then, it's easy. I just need to have Gapuro do the quest a few more times. I had assumed they would need to sit down and recover, maybe rest for an hour or more before regaining their strength. But in less than 10 minutes, they were already back on their feet, walking toward the quest board to accept another wood gathering quest with eager steps. Whoa! These guys are insanely hardworking. And just like that, they worked and worked, chopping trees like there was no tomorrow. The sun climbed higher into the sky, casting shifting patterns of light across the clearing. Sweat poured down their green skin, making it glisten under the bright rays, while their arms moved in steady, rhythmic motions. Swing, pull, swing, pull. The sharp sound of axes biting into wood echoed through the clearing like a steady heartbeat, accompanied by the occasional crack of splitting timber and the rustle of falling branches. Eventually, as the last ray of sunlight vanished behind the trees and the forest grew dim with twilight, their work for the day finally came to an end. They ended up completing the quest 4 times each. Since each run took around 3 hours, they had worked for nearly 12 hours in total, stopping only briefly to eat the simple snacks they carried. I could not help feeling a little bad. It almost felt like I was some villain boss exploiting my own citizens. Am I overworking these guys now? But, well, these goblins seem to really enjoy doing the quest. And it's not like I'm forcing them to work or anything. Yeah, all I had done was post the quest on the board. Whether they accepted it or not was entirely up to them. The two goblins even tried to take the quest for a fifth time, reaching for the poster with tired but determined hands, but I quickly took it down before they could grab it. Come on. It's already night. I can't have you two go outside and work in the dark. It's too dangerous. Yeah, what if the wolves came back? Seriously, have you guys already forgotten what happened yesterday? The moment the quest disappeared, however, both goblins froze and stared at the now empty wall. Their expressions immediately turned disappointed. Their ears drooped low, Gapuro's shoulders slumped heavily, while Gapuran tilted her head at the blank stone as if sheer willpower alone might make the paper magically reappear. Hey, don't worry. I will give you the quest again tomorrow. But now, you guys need to rest. Deciding that these two deserved some extra reward for their super hard work, I materialized a few thick cuts of steak before them. The goblins immediately cheered up and accepted the steak. They didn't even forget to bow to me. Wahaha! I'm such a good ruler now. Just work hard and be loyal to me, and you two will have unlimited steak for life. To my surprise, however, they didn't devour the meat on the spot. Gapuran muttered something to Gapuro in their rough goblin tongue, then stepped outside to gather twigs and dry grass. She returned and arranged the kindling carefully within a rough circle of stones she had collected from the forest floor, forming a simple fire pit. Oh! What's this? I watched, curious, as she arranged everything with care. I realized what she was after. She wanted to cook the steak. And that reminded me. Gapuran actually had cooking LV. 1. The goblin girl pulled out two pieces of rock from somewhere and started hitting them together. Spark after spark flew into the dry grass, bright but fleeting. She was trying to make fire the old-fashioned way. But after 5 full minutes of persistent effort, however, no flame appeared. Gapuran frowned, her arms now trembling slightly with fatigue. Each spark flared briefly and died before it could ignite the tinder, leaving only thin wisps of smoke. Gapuro stepped in to take over, using his greater strength, but even he yielded the same frustrating result. Clearly, raw muscle power alone wasn't enough. Oh come on! I chuckled to myself. Are you guys silly? Fire! Why make fire when there's already fire in the castle? My torches were already burning, providing light for the chamber. The flames danced along the walls, warm and inviting. But for some reason, neither of them utilized it. Perhaps they think they're not allowed to use my fire? If that's the case, then I need to act. Just then, I noticed something else. The small fire pit had already been registered to the system as fire pit. And with that, I could easily light it, just like how I had been controlling all of my torches with my lighting manipulation. Haha! Let there be fire. I focused my will on the pit. The flame roared to life. Fwoom! The dry twigs caught instantly. Both goblins jumped back in surprise, eyes wide with shock. Then, slowly, their faces lit up with pure wonder and delight. Gapuran skewered the thick cuts of steak onto sharpened sticks and settled cross-legged beside the fire pit. She began turning them slowly over the flames. Meanwhile, Gapuro's gaze remained glued to the sizzling steak. His eyes were wide, his mouth slightly open, and a thin trail of drool had already begun slipping from the corner of his lips. Even Gapuran, disciplined as she tried to be, could not fully resist the temptation. Her stomach growled audibly, loud enough to make her ears twitch, and she had to swallow hard to keep from snatching a bite while it was still half raw. Still, she held firm. She was determined to do this properly. As the steak cooked, the most mouth-watering aroma filled the chamber, rich and savory, layered with the smell of charred fat and seared meat. The fire crackled merrily, and every few seconds a droplet of melting fat dripped into the flames with a sharp hiss, sending up tiny bursts of fragrant smoke that made the air shimmer. But after only 2 minutes, all restraint crumbled. The two goblins could wait no longer. Gapuro moved first, and Gapuran followed right after. Each grabbed a stick, lifted the steak to their mouths, and bit down with completely unrestrained enthusiasm. Their teeth sank deep into the tender flesh, tearing away large chunks as they chewed. Instantly, their faces melted into expressions of pure bliss. Their eyes squeezed shut. Both of them clutched their cheeks with their hands as muffled, ecstatic groans escaped their throats. Damn, is it really that good? I watched, half amused and half incredulous. It is probably still rare in the middle. I can still see red. And there is no seasoning at all. A proper steak needs salt, pepper, maybe a little herb rub. Yet seeing their sheer joy made my non-existent mouth water. As a castle, I couldn't eat. I couldn't even taste. The unfairness of it all stung. Feeling generous, and perhaps a little jealous, I decided to reward their hard work even further. I materialized several plump raw chickens, a generous pile of fresh crusty bread, and a bucket of cool milk. The system would not allow me to buy milk without something to contain it, so I had ended up purchasing a wooden bucket from the furniture shop first. The moment they saw the extra food, the goblins' eyes lit up like lanterns. They grilled the chicken only halfway before tearing into it, toasted the bread over the fire, and gulped down the milk until their bellies swelled. Contented sighs soon escaped both of them. It was, without exaggeration, an amazing feast. Moments later, with the goblins finally resting, sprawled contentedly near the dying fire, I turned my attention to some rough calculations about the day's productivity. I had started with 91 castle points. I spent 40 points purchasing power stones as quest rewards for the pair, plus another hefty 15 on food and water throughout the day. They were only about the size of large humans, yet they ate like starving horses. That brought the total expenditure to a whopping 55 points. Ouch. But on the income side, things looked very positive. The passive generator skill had granted me 10 points automatically. Better yet, the two goblins had brought in a staggering 826 units of wood. The system was purchasing wood at a steady rate of 1 point per 5 units. If I sold it all, that translated to 165.2 points. Call it 165 for simplicity. Combined with the generator income, my total revenue reached 175 points. After subtracting the 55-point outlay for wages and provisions, my net profit came to a tidy 120 points. I ended up selling enough wood to make 60 points so I could pay and feed my citizens the next day. The rest, I decided to keep in my inventory as wood. There was no need to convert it all just yet. Not bad at all. Not bad. And what if I have more citizens? I had already started dreaming. Visions of grandeur flickered through my mind. 100. No, 1,000 goblins. I'd be swimming in points. Filthy rich. The logical next step was clear: send Gapuro and Gapuran back to their tribes. They could spread word of the generous castle lord who offered endless quests, power stones, and feasts. More citizens meant exponential growth, and, more importantly, it would help repair my reputation among the wild goblins who still viewed me with suspicion and fear after I had slain so many of their kin. But before dispatching them, I wanted to run a few more experiments with my quest creation skill. Specifically, to probe its limits of what kinds of tasks I could assign, what restrictions existed, and how flexible the rewards and conditions could be. This would likely take half a day. At the same time, I needed to prepare for the arrival of more goblins. My current accommodations were embarrassingly bare. I required basic furniture at the very least to maximize my appeal. Perhaps even something grander, a towering dragon statue in the main hall to impress newcomers and project authority. I also needed to find a way to make sure the raccoons in my basement would be safe as well. I was thinking of making a separate entry path for them. And of course, there were the points. Granting citizenship would cost castle points per goblin. Wait, oh, right. I still had that in my inventory, the corpse of the wolf I'd killed. The system was offering a generous 250 points for it. Tempting, but I'd held off on selling instinctively. Good thing, too, because I now had a far better use in mind. I summoned my stone knife, the one with the butchering skill, and gently placed it in front of Gopurin. Previously, every monster corpse I obtained had gone straight to the system for a quick point conversion, simply because I lacked any means to process them. But now I had citizens. Capable ones. My girl, you wanted more quests, right? Wood gathering is off the table at night. It's too dangerous. But how about this instead? I created a new quest on the spot and assigned it directly to her, wolf carcass dismantling. For the reward, I set it at 1 power stone. I had no idea yet what usable materials the wolf would yield, nor how long the task would take, but it seemed fair. Gopurin accepted without hesitation. Ding. Gopurin has accepted your wolf carcass dismantling quest. All right. Excellent. I materialized the wolf's giant body right in front of her. She grabbed the knife eagerly and set to work without delay, her small hands moving with surprising confidence. Gapuro watched from the side, eyes narrowed with unmistakable jealousy. Sorry, buddy. I only have one knife with the butchering skill. To my surprise, even without the butchering skill and without any quest assigned, Gapuro jumped in to help anyway. He pulled out a knife of his own, one he'd apparently been secretly carrying all this time. Unfortunately, it was utter garbage. The blade was so dull it couldn't even pierce the wolf's thick hide properly. Watching him struggle was painful, so I quickly bought a decent replacement from the item shop, handed it over, and slapped a matching quest on him for good measure. After all, as a responsible boss, I couldn't just stand by while my employee slaved away for free. It turned out to be the right call. The wolf was enormous, easily the size of a bull, so the sheer volume of work quickly became apparent. Processing it would take far longer and require far more effort than I'd initially expected. There was a real risk that Gapuro, lacking the butchering skill, might damage valuable parts. But with Gopurin quietly guiding him, he managed surprisingly well. That got me thinking. How exactly do skills function in this world? Clearly, simply equipping the stone knife had given Gopurin an instinctive understanding of basic butchering techniques. It was almost like downloaded knowledge. The moment the knife was in her hand, she moved with effortless confidence, like someone who had been butchering wolves her entire life. But what would happen if she unequipped it? Would that knowledge disappear instantly, leaving her as clueless as before? Or would the skill leave something behind, some kind of permanent foundation she could continue to build upon? If skills were purely temporary and tied only to equipment, vanishing the moment the tool was removed, then that honestly made little sense to me. After all, if someone performs the same task 100 times, or even 1,000 times, do they really gain nothing from the experience? Surely some of that knowledge had to remain. On the other hand, if the knowledge became fully permanent after just one use, then the mechanic would be ridiculously broken. I could simply stockpile equipment loaded with every possible skill, then cycle my citizens through them one by one. Equip. Unequip. Repeat. In no time, every goblin in my little kingdom would become a jack of all trades, proficient in everything from butchering and cooking to blacksmithing and construction. I highly doubted the system would allow something that overpowered. As I continued watching the two work on the wolf, the truth slowly revealed itself. Aha! I see. It was actually a mix of the two. A hybrid effect, neither fully temporary nor permanently imprinted from the start. At first, the difference between Gapuro and Gapuran was stark. Gapuran, with the butchering skill, worked swiftly and cleanly, while Gapuro fumbled, struggled a little bit. Then Gapuran paused to rest and clean her hands, handing the knife to Gapuro for a moment. Instantly, his movements improved. He became sharper, more confident, more efficient. But when she took the knife back, he reverted almost completely to his earlier clumsiness. The conclusion was clear: the skill and knowledge granted by the weapon were not permanent. They faded when unequipped. Yet they weren't entirely lost. Even without the good knife, Gapuro got noticeably better than he'd been at the start just by using the knife for a brief amount of time. In other words, using the tool had accelerated real learning. The equipment acted as a powerful catalyst, fast-tracking the acquisition of the skill through guided practice. Oh my! This opens up so many possibilities. Though, I will need to perform more experiment with various other equipment to confirm this. And then, after 4 long hours of sweaty, bloody labor, something extraordinary happened. Gapuro froze mid-cut. His body shimmered with a faint glow, his eyes widened as though seeing something only he could perceive. And from that moment on, even without the good knife, his performance leaped forward. He worked just as well as Gapuran had with the tool. Suspicious, I pulled up his status screen. And there it was. Butchering LV1. My hypothesis had just been reinforced. Not fully confirmed yet, of course. But this was strong evidence that repeated use of skill-granting equipment could eventually lead to the user permanently learning the skill. In the end, it took the two of them a full 5 hours to completely process the wolf carcass. They worked deep into the night, but neither complained nor showed any sign of wanting to stop. The total yield was staggering. 412 wolf meat, 1 kilogram per unit. 125 bones, 1 kilogram per unit. 70 fat, 1 kilogram per unit. 4 wolf fangs. 20 wolf claws. 1 gray-horned wolf pelt. 2 gray-horned wolf horn. 1 gray-horned wolf heart. 10 fur, 1 kilogram per unit. 5 power stones F. Damn. To think the system was only offering 250 points for the unprocessed corpse. What a rip-off. At first, I'd thought 250 points was already a generous payout for one wolf. But after seeing the sheer volume and quality of materials we'd extracted, it was obvious the system was being absurdly greedy. Even if I sold back just the meat, bones, and fat at the system's buy rates. 2 meat rightward arrow 1 point. 1 bone rightward arrow 1 point. 2 fat rightward arrow 1 point. That alone would net me 366 points already. And that didn't even account for the fangs, claws, pelt, horn, or those precious power stones. Those materials could be sold for a fortune no less. Wolf fangs rightward arrow 10 points each. Wolf claws rightward arrow 5 points each. Grey horned wolf pelt rightward arrow 130 points. Grey horned wolf horn rightward arrow 45 points each. Grey horned wolf heart rightward arrow 100 points. Fur rightward arrow 10 points each. With this, my net worth hit a ridiculous number, 1100 points. Guys, this is incredible. Thank you for the hard work. I marveled at the bountiful harvest as I admired my newly stacked inventory. Naturally, I decided they deserved a proper bonus. Obviously, 1 power stone for this task is way too cheap. Alright, each of you gets 2 extra stones. The moment they received the extra rewards, the 2 goblins lit up with pure joy, jumping and chattering excitedly. As usual, they immediately popped the power stones into their mouths. Their bodies glowed, brighter this time than before. Ding! Gapuro has leveled up. Level 10 rightward arrow level 11. Ding! Gapuran has leveled up. Level 10 rightward arrow level 11. So I was right? They're eating power stones to level up. I didn't waste another second before pulling up their status screens. I checked Gapuran's status as well, confirming that she got the similar increase in her stats. So per level they gain roughly plus 50 max HP, plus 5 max MP, plus 50 max stamina. And a whopping 10 points distributed across core attributes. That's fantastic growth. That immediately made me compare it to what I remembered of Gapuro's earlier stats. When I had first saved him, he was only level 8 and had around 10 total attribute points. That meant each level from 0 to 10 had likely granted only 1 point, or at most 2. But now, the jump from level 10 to 11 alone had given him nearly as many attribute points as his entire progression from level 0 to 10 combined. The difference was absurd. No wonder the cost of leveling up had become so steep. In this case, it had taken 7 power stones to push Gapuro from level 10 to 11. That was equivalent to 35 castle points. By comparison, raising him directly from level 9 to 10 through Lord's Blessing had cost only 12 points. That aside, I should always use power stones if I wanted to level up my citizens, as it was far more cost efficient this way. After all, as I had checked earlier, going from level 10 to 11 through the same skill would cost a whopping 100 points. That was nearly 3 times more expensive than simply using power stones. And if I wanted to push him to level 12 after that, it would cost another 150 points. There really is a cost to everything. This Super Forest Goblin variant is powerful, but it demands far more resources to raise. Satisfied with the results of my little analysis, I let them rest. I turned off the torchlight, leaving only the crackling fire pit to provide warmth. They simply curled up on the wooden beds I had bought for them and went to sleep. The next morning, I let the 2 goblins sleep in a little longer. Today would be a relaxing day for them, as I planned to spend most of the morning testing my quest creation skill. I began with small experiments that didn't require their participation, mostly probing the hidden rules. Before long, the mechanics started falling into place quite smoothly. First revelation, I had previously assumed rewards were limited to items I already held in my inventory. That turned out to be only partially true. The restriction wasn't strictly things I currently possess, but rather things I can afford. When I tried drafting a simple quest that rewarded 1 kilogram of chicken meat, even though I had 0 chicken in my inventory at the time, the system still allowed me to generate the quest scroll. Upon closer inspection, a small note appeared in the reward section. If, at the moment of completion, no chicken meat is present in the inventory, the cost will be automatically deducted from your castle points balance. Even more surprising, I could offer rewards that didn't physically exist at all, such as level +1 or +1 to regeneration skill level. This worked because I possessed the Lord's Blessing skill, which let me directly raise citizens' levels and skill levels. When I included such rewards in a quest, the system said that it would calculate the equivalent cost and deduce it from my balance at the time of quest completion, equal to the same points I would have spent using Lord's Blessing manually. However, I couldn't offer direct increases to core attributes, such as attack, defense, speed, etc., since Lord's Blessing's scope was limited to only overall level and skill levels. But it also meant that if I ever acquired a skill in the future that could grant core attribute boosts, I would presumably be able to design quests around those rewards as well. Pretty nice. On the flip side, if I tried to offer something outrageously beyond my means, like, say, level +10, the system simply refused to generate the scroll. This was because with my current castle points balance, there was no way I could cover the cost. And finally, I tested whether I could use items my citizens would gather during the quest as part of the reward itself. I drafted a quest, gather 10 twigs, reward, 5 twigs. At that moment, I had no twigs in inventory, and the system shop offered none for sale. The only realistic source of twigs was the goblins themselves, collecting them during the quest. To my surprise, the system accepted it without complaint. Cool. This will opens up so much flexibility. Just then, Gapuro and Gapuran woke up at almost the exact same moment, as though they shared an internal alarm clock. For a brief second they looked drowsy, blinking sleepily. But within 2 heartbeats, both sprang out of bed, alert and refreshed. Gapuro dropped into a quick set of push ups while Gapuran stretched her arms and legs. Perfect timing, you two. With my test subjects awake and ready, it was time for the next round of experiments.